When Jake found the crashed alien princess in his backyard, he thought he was saving her life. He had no idea she was about to completely rewrite his. Jake woke up at 6 in the morning like he always did. His small apartment in Portland was quiet, just the way he liked it. After working as a software developer for 3 years at the same company, he had gotten into a routine. Wake up, coffee, morning jog in the woods behind his building, then work from home. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Jake put on his running shoes, grabbed his water bottle, and headed out the back door of his apartment complex. The woods were peaceful, with tall pine trees and a small trail that wound through them for about 2 miles. He had been running this same path for months and knew every tree, every rock, every turn. But today was different. About halfway through his usual route, Jake noticed something strange. There was a bright metallic gleam through the trees that definitely wasn't there yesterday. He slowed down and walked toward it, thinking maybe someone had dumped some trash or old car parts. What he found made him stop in his tracks completely. It looked like a crashed vehicle, but unlike anything he had ever seen before. The metal was smooth and silver, almost mirror-like, and it was shaped like a teardrop. Parts of it were scattered around the small clearing, and there were scorch marks on the nearby trees. The whole area smelled like burnt electronics mixed with something sweet he couldn't identify. Jake pulled out his phone to call the police, but then he heard something that made him freeze. It was a soft groan, like someone in pain. He looked around the wreckage more carefully and saw her. A woman was lying unconscious near the largest piece of the crashed vehicle. At first glance, she looked human, but as Jake got closer, he realized she was definitely not from around here. Her skin had a subtle purple tint that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. She was tall, probably 6 feet, with long limbs and delicate features. Strange silver markings ran along her arms like intricate tattoos. Jake's first instinct was to call 911, but something stopped him. If this woman was what he thought she was, bringing the authorities might not be the best idea for her. He had watched enough movies to know that government labs and alien visitors didn't mix well. The woman stirred and slowly opened her eyes. They were a striking violet color and seemed to glow slightly. She sat up carefully, wincing as she moved, and looked directly at Jake. "You," she said in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality to it. "You will help me." It wasn't a question or a request. It was a command. Jake blinked in surprise. "Are you okay? Do you need medical attention?" The woman looked at him as if he had asked something stupid. She stood up gracefully, despite apparently being in a crash, and brushed dirt off her unusual clothing. Her outfit looked like it was made of the same metallic material as her ship, fitting her perfectly and seeming to shimmer as she moved. "I am Princess Zarathea of the Luxarian Empire," she announced, as if Jake should recognize the name. "My reconnaissance vessel has malfunctioned during atmospheric entry. You will provide me with shelter and assistance while I repair my communication systems." Jake stared at her. "I'm sorry. Did you just say you're a princess? From another planet?" "Obviously," Zarathea replied, looking annoyed that she had to explain something so basic. "Your species' broadcasts are quite informative. I know how this works. Human males exist to serve and please females. You should be honored that someone of my status is allowing you to assist me." "Wait, what?" Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "That's not how things work here at all." Zarathea waved her hand dismissively. "Do not attempt to deceive me. I have studied your entertainment transmissions extensively. Your males are eager to fulfill every desire of dominant females. It is your natural order." Jake realized she was talking about some very specific types of movies and shows that definitely didn't represent normal human relationships. He felt his face turn red with embarrassment. "Look, those aren't real life," he started to explain. But Zarathea wasn't listening. She was examining one of the devices that had fallen from her ship. It looked like a cross between a smartphone and a piece of jewelry, glowing with soft blue light. "My communication array is damaged," she said, more to herself than to Jake. "I will need several of your Earth days to repair it and contact my fleet." She turned back to Jake with an expectant look. "Your dwelling, where is it?" Jake looked around at the crash site, then back at this strange woman who claimed to be an alien princess. Every rational part of his brain told him to walk away, call the authorities, and pretend this never happened. But looking at her standing, there obviously far from home and in trouble, he couldn't just abandon her. "My apartment is about a mile back that way," he said, pointing through the trees. "But listen, if you're coming with me, we need to establish some ground rules." Zarathea tilted her head, looking confused. "Rules? You wish to set conditions for the honor of serving me?" "It's not about serving anyone," Jake said firmly. "It's about being decent human beings to each other." The princess looked at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. She gathered up her damaged device and a few other pieces of technology from the crash site. "Very well," she said finally. "Lead the way to your dwelling. But understand that I am being quite generous by allowing you this opportunity. Most males of my species would fight for the chance to attend to royalty." As they walked back through the woods toward his apartment, Jake wondered what he was getting himself into. Zarathea walked beside him with perfect posture, as if she was strolling through a palace instead of hiking through forest debris in the early morning. "So, Luxarian Empire," Jake said, trying to make conversation. "Where exactly is that?" "Several light years from here in what you would call the Andromeda sector," she replied casually. "We have been monitoring your planet for some time. Your species shows interesting potential, though you are obviously quite primitive." Jake felt a little insulted by that comment but decided to let it slide. "And you were doing reconnaissance?" "Initial cultural assessment," Zarathea confirmed, "though I must say your entertainment broadcast painted a very clear picture of your social structure. Males submitting to female authority, eager to please and serve. It seems quite civilized." Jake groaned internally. This was going to be a very long conversation. When they reached his apartment building, Jake realized he had another problem. How was he going to explain his unusual houseguest to his neighbors? Zarathea's purple-tinted skin and silver markings weren't exactly subtle. "We might want to do something about your appearance," Jake suggested as they climbed the stairs to his second-floor apartment. Zarathea looked offended. "My appearance is that of Luxarian royalty. I will not disguise my heritage to make inferior beings more comfortable." "It's not about comfort," Jake explained as he unlocked his door. "It's about not causing a panic. Humans aren't used to meeting people from other planets." "That is their limitation, not mine," she replied, walking past him into his small living room. Jake closed the door behind them and watched as Zarathea examined his modest apartment with obvious disappointment. She ran her finger along his second-hand couch, inspected his small kitchen, and shook her head at his basic television. "This dwelling is quite small," she observed, "though I suppose it will suffice temporarily. You may begin by preparing nourishment. I require sustenance after my ordeal." Jake felt his patience starting to wear thin. "Look, Princess, I get that you're used to being waited on, but that's not how this is going to work. If you want food, you can ask politely, or better yet, help make it." Zarathea stared at him in genuine confusion. "You refuse a direct command from royalty?" "I'm not refusing anything," Jake said, sitting down in his favorite chair. "I'm just saying that if we're going to share this space, we're going to treat each other with respect. That means saying please and thank you, helping out around here and not ordering each other around like servants." The alien princess looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to solve a complicated puzzle. Finally, she said, "Your behavior does not match your species' programming." "We're not programmed," Jake replied. "We're just people trying to get along with each other." Zarathea seemed to consider this, though she clearly didn't understand it. She sat down on his couch, her posture still perfectly straight, and continued to study him with those glowing violet eyes. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "you are simply a defective specimen." Jake couldn't help but laugh at that. "Yeah, maybe I am." For the first time since meeting her, he saw something that might have been the beginning of a smile cross Zarathea's face. It was going to be an interesting few days. The next morning, Jake woke up to the sound of strange beeping noises coming from his living room. He stumbled out of bed and found Zarathea sitting cross-legged on his floor, surrounded by pieces of alien technology. She had somehow transformed his coffee table into what looked like a high-tech workstation. "What are you doing?" Jake asked, rubbing his eyes. Repairing my communication device, she replied without looking up. Though your primitive dwelling lacks proper power sources, I have had to improvise. Jake noticed that his television, microwave, and computer were all plugged into a strange silver box that hummed with energy. His electricity bill was going to be enormous. You can't just take over my apartment like this, he said. Zarathea finally looked up at him. I am not taking over anything. I am simply making necessary improvements to this inadequate space. As if to prove her point, she pressed something on one of her devices. Suddenly, the walls of Jake's living room changed color, shifting from plain white to a soft blue that seemed to glow from within. Hey, Jake protested. Change it back. This is much more pleasing, Zarathea said dismissively. Your previous color scheme was depressing. Jake stared at his transformed living room. The walls weren't just blue now. They seemed to pulse gently with light, and the air felt different, cleaner somehow. Despite himself, he had to admit it looked pretty cool. That's not the point, he said. This is my home. You can't just redecorate without asking. Zarathea looked genuinely confused by his objection. But I have improved it significantly. You should be grateful. Grateful? Jake's voice rose slightly. Princess, you've been here one day and you've already taken over my living room, used up probably a week's worth of electricity and changed my walls without permission. This isn't how roommates behave. Roommates? Zarathea stood up gracefully. I am not your roommate. I am royalty-seeking temporary refuge. There is a significant difference. Before Jake could respond, there was a knock at his door. He looked through the peephole and saw Mrs. Chen, his elderly neighbor, from across the hall. Hide, he whispered urgently to Zarathea. I do not hide, she replied loudly. Jake opened the door just a crack. Good morning, Mrs. Chen. Jake, dear, the old woman said, looking concerned. I heard strange noises last night, beeping and humming. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Jake said quickly. Just had the TV on too loud. Mrs. Chen tried to peer past him into the apartment, and I could swear I saw strange lights under your door. Blue lights. New LED bulbs, Jake lied. Very energy efficient. Behind him, he heard Zarathea's voice clearly saying, This elderly female appears to be malfunctioning. Should I repair her? Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. Who was that? Jake, do you have someone in there? Jake's mind raced. My cousin. She's visiting from Canada. She has a really strange accent. I am not his cousin, came Zarathea's voice again. I am Princess Zarathea of the Luxarian Empire, and this human is attending to my needs. Mrs. Chen looked at Jake with raised eyebrows. Your cousin seems very dramatic. Theater major, Jake said weakly. After he finally convinced Mrs. Chen that everything was normal, Jake closed the door and turned to face Zarathea. What part of hide didn't you understand? He asked. I told you, I do not hide from inferior beings, she replied. Though I am curious about that elderly female's mental state. Her cognitive functions seem impaired. She's not impaired. She's just concerned about her neighbor, Jake explained. Mrs. Chen is actually one of the smartest people I know. She used to be a physics professor. Zarathea looked interested for the first time. A scientist? That is unexpected. Your entertainment broadcasts suggested that elderly humans were typically discarded by your society. What kind of shows were you watching? Jake asked, horrified. Various educational programs about human mating rituals and social hierarchies, Zarathea replied matter-of-factly. Jake realized she had been learning about humans from reality TV shows and worse. No wonder she had such a twisted view of how people actually lived. Those aren't educational programs, he said. Those are entertainment. They're not real life. But they feature actual humans, Zarathea argued. Humans acting badly for money, Jake clarified. Most people aren't like that. Zarathea seemed to consider this. Then how do your social structures actually function? Before Jake could answer, his phone rang. It was his boss, Dave. Hey, Jake, Dave's voice came through the speaker. The Morrison project needs some updates. Can you have the new code ready by Friday? Sure, no problem, Jake replied. Great. Oh, and don't forget the team meeting Thursday. We're discussing the quarterly reviews. After Jake hung up, he noticed Zarathea watching him with intense interest. That male gave you commands, she observed. Yet you are both males. This contradicts my understanding of your hierarchy. It's called having a job, Jake explained. Dave is my boss, so he assigns me work. It's not about male or female. It's about professional relationships. But in my studies, human males only took orders from females, Zarathea insisted. Princess, I really think you need to see how normal people actually live, Jake said. Those shows you watched aren't representative of real relationships. Later that day, Jake had to run errands, and despite his better judgment, he brought Zarathea along. She had used some kind of device to make her skin look more human-colored, though her height and unusual posture still made her stand out. At the grocery store, Zarathea watched in fascination as Jake interacted with the cashier, a young woman named Lisa, who knew him from his regular visits. How's the programming going, Jake? Lisa asked as she rang up his groceries. Not bad. Working on a new project that's pretty challenging, Jake replied. Well, you're smart enough to figure it out, Lisa said with a smile. See you next week. As they left the store, Zarathea was unusually quiet. That female showed you respect, she said finally. Lisa's nice, Jake agreed. She's studying computer science at the community college. We sometimes talk about coding. She did not command. You to serve her? Zarathea continued, seeming puzzled. Why would she? We barely know each other, Jake said. We're just friendly neighbors. That evening, Zarathea sat quietly on Jake's couch, working on her communication device. But Jake noticed she kept glancing at him as he cooked dinner, cleaned up, and went about his normal evening routine. Your behavior is inconsistent with my research, she said suddenly. Jake looked up from his laptop. How so? You perform domestic tasks without being commanded. You show respect to females without expecting. Compensation. You assist me without demanding anything in return. Jake closed his laptop and looked at her. Princess, I think your research was really wrong about how humans actually behave. Zarathea was quiet for a long moment. If that is true, she said slowly, then I may have misunderstood a great deal about your species. Maybe, Jake said gently. But that's okay. You're here now and you can see for yourself how things really work. For the first time since she had arrived, Zarathea looked uncertain rather than commanding. It was a small change, but Jake could sense that something important was beginning to shift in her understanding of the world around her. By the end of the first week, Jake had developed a routine around his unusual houseguest. Every morning, he would wake up to find Zarathea working on her various alien devices, muttering in what he assumed was her native language. She had managed to fix his walls back to their original color after he had insisted, though she had added some kind of air purification system that made the apartment smell like a mountain meadow. The real breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when Jake woke up feeling terrible. His head was pounding, his throat was raw, and he felt like he had been hit by a truck. He stumbled to the kitchen, hoping coffee would help, but ended up leaning against the counter just trying to stay upright. You appear to be malfunctioning, Zarathea observed from her spot on the floor where she was working. I'm sick, Jake croaked. Just a cold, I think. Nothing serious. Zarathea looked up from her devices, studying him with those violet eyes. Your temperature is elevated and your respiratory system is compromised. Like I said, just a cold, Jake repeated, though he was starting to feel worse by the minute. Sit, Zarathea commanded, but for once her tone wasn't arrogant. It sounded almost concerned. Jake was too weak to argue. He collapsed onto his couch, pulling a blanket around himself. Within minutes, he was shivering despite feeling hot. Zarathea approached him cautiously. May I? She asked, holding up her hands. Jake nodded, not really sure what she was asking permission for. She placed her palms on his forehead, and immediately her silver markings began to glow softly. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation, like gentle electricity running through his body. Pneumonia, she said after a moment, pulling her hands away. Early stages, but it will worsen without treatment. Pneumonia? Jake was alarmed. Are you sure? My people are trained in medical assessment, Zarathea replied. This is a serious condition for humans. She stood up and began gathering some of her alien devices. You require immediate treatment. I should go to the hospital, Jake said, trying to get up. No. Zarathea's voice was firm. Your primitive medical facilities will take too long to diagnose and treat this properly. I can help you. Jake wanted to argue, but another wave of fever hit him, making him dizzy. What are you going to do? Luxarian medical technology is far advanced beyond yours, she explained, assembling what looked like a small scanner. I can synthesize the appropriate treatment from materials available in your dwelling. As Jake drifted in and out of feverish sleep over the next few hours, he was dimly aware of Zarathea moving around the apartment. She was doing something in his kitchen, mixing things together, and the air filled with strange but pleasant smells. When he woke up more clearly several hours later, she was sitting in a chair next to the couch, watching him with an expression he had never seen on her face before. It looked almost like worry. Drink this, she said, offering him a mug filled with a warm golden liquid. What is it? Jake asked weakly. Medicine, she replied simply. It will help your body fight the infection. Jake took a sip and was surprised. It tasted like honey mixed with herbs, pleasant and soothing. It's actually good. Luxarian remedies are designed to be palatable, Zarathea explained. Suffering should be minimized during healing. As Jake sipped the medicine, he watched Zarathea carefully. She was monitoring some kind of device that seemed to be reading his vital signs, and she looked genuinely invested in his recovery. Why are you helping me? He asked. Zarathea looked surprised by the question. You are ill. Of course I would help. But yesterday you said I was a defective specimen, Jake pointed out, and you've spent the whole week treating me like your personal servant. For a moment, Zarathea didn't respond. She adjusted something on her monitoring device, avoiding his eyes. You have been kind to me, she said finally, her voice quieter than usual. Despite my behavior, you have provided shelter and assistance. It would be dishonorable to allow you to suffer when I have the means to help. Jake felt another wave of fever, and he started shivering again. Without being asked, Zarathea stood up and adjusted his blanket, making sure he was properly covered. Rest now, she said softly. The medicine needs time to work. Over the next 2 days, Jake drifted in and out of consciousness as the pneumonia ran its course. During his lucid moments, he became aware that Zarathea was taking care of him in ways he never would have expected. She brought him food, simple things like soup and toast that she had somehow learned to make. She monitored his temperature constantly and adjusted her medicine accordingly. She even cleaned up around the apartment without being asked. During one particularly bad fever episode, Jake found himself talking without really being aware of what he was saying. Later, he would only remember fragments, talking about his childhood, his parents who had died in a car accident when he was 22, his ex-girlfriend who had left him because she said he was too boring, his fears about being alone for the rest of his life. When the fever finally broke on the 3rd day, Jake woke up feeling weak but clear-headed for the first time in days. Zarathea was asleep in the chair next to him, her monitoring device still running, her hand resting on his forehead as if she had been checking his temperature. "Princess," he said softly. Her eyes opened immediately and she sat up straight. "How do you feel?" "Better," Jake said honestly. "Much better, thank you." Zarathea studied her device readings, then nodded with satisfaction. "The infection is clearing. You should make a complete recovery within a few days." "You saved my life," Jake realized. "Perhaps," she replied, though she didn't seem comfortable with the gratitude. "Why?" Jake asked. "I mean, really, why? You could have just let me go to the hospital, or even ignored me completely." Zarathea was quiet for a long moment. "During your illness, you spoke of many things. Your past, your emotions, your experiences. I have never heard a male speak so openly about feelings and fears." "Most guys don't like talking about that stuff," Jake admitted. In Luxarian society, emotions are considered weakness, Zarathea continued. Males are expected to be silent and obedient. Females are trained to show no vulnerability. But listening to you, I realize that perhaps emotion is not weakness. Perhaps it is what makes you truly alive. Jake looked at her, seeing something different in her expression. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. You've never talked about your feelings? He asked. Never, she replied immediately. Royalty must always appear strong and in control. To show doubt or fear would be to invite challenge to our authority. That sounds lonely, Jake observed. Zarathea looked surprised, as if that thought had never occurred to her. Yes, it is quite lonely. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Zarathea spoke again. I have received communications from my home world, she said quietly. Jake felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. Good news? My father has declared me missing and presumed dead, she replied matter-of-factly, though Jake could hear pain underneath her calm tone. My younger brother has been named heir to the throne. I'm sorry, Jake said, meaning it. It is probably for the best, Zarathea replied, though her voice was small. I was never suited for royal duties. Too many questions, too much curiosity about things beyond our world. Their loss, Jake said firmly. Zarathea looked at him with surprise. You truly mean that? Of course I do. You're brilliant, you're brave enough to explore unknown worlds, and you just saved my life with technology I can't even understand. Any society that doesn't value that is missing out. For the first time, since Jake had known her, Zarathea's perfect composure cracked. Her eyes filled with what might have been tears, though she quickly looked away. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Jake replied. For everything. As Jake recovered over the following days, he noticed more changes in Zarathea. She started asking him questions about Earth, about human relationships, about how people treated each other when they cared about someone. She began helping with household tasks without being asked, and she even learned to make coffee the way Jake liked it. Most importantly, she started talking about herself. Her real self, not the imperial princess facade. She told him about growing up in a palace where showing emotion was forbidden, about her fascination with other worlds, about feeling trapped by expectations she could never meet. I think, she said one evening as they sat together watching one of Jake's favorite movies, I am beginning to understand what you meant about treating each other with respect. Yeah? Jake asked. It is not about power or hierarchy, she continued thoughtfully. It is about recognizing the value in another being regardless of their status or species. Jake smiled. Now you're getting it. I have much to learn, Zarathea admitted, but I find myself curious about this different way of living. Jake looked at her, seeing not an alien princess but simply someone trying to figure out how to connect with another person. We've got time, he said gently. We can figure it out together. 3 weeks had passed since Jake's recovery, and life in the apartment had settled into something almost normal. Zarathea had stopped treating Jake like a servant and had instead become genuinely curious about human life. She asked endless questions about everything from why humans kept pets to how friendships worked to why people said bless you when someone sneezed. Jake found himself looking forward to these conversations. Zarathea was incredibly intelligent, and seeing the world through her eyes made him notice things he had never thought about before. She was fascinated by simple human kindnesses, the way Mrs. Chen always asked about his day, how the mailman remembered everyone's names, or how strangers would help each other with heavy doors. Your species is far more cooperative than my research indicated, she observed one morning while watching Jake help his downstairs neighbor carry groceries upstairs. Most people are pretty decent when you give them a chance, Jake replied. Zarathea was working on a new project now. Instead of just trying to contact her homeworld, she was building something that looked like a cross between a computer and a telescope. She had been secretive about it for days, working on it late into the night. What exactly are you making over there? Jake asked one evening. A cultural observation device, she replied without looking up. I want to study human behavior patterns, more accurately. You mean spy on people? Zarathea paused in her work. Observe. For scientific purposes. I realize now that my previous data about your species was severely flawed. I want to understand how humans truly interact when they believe they are unobserved. Jake wasn't entirely comfortable with the idea, but he trusted that Zarathea's intentions were good. She had changed so much from the demanding princess who had first crashed into his life. The real test of that change came on a Thursday afternoon. Jake was working at his computer when he heard voices in the hallway. Looking through the peephole, he saw two men in dark suits talking to Mrs. Chen. "We're investigating reports of unusual electromagnetic activity in this building," one of them was saying. "Have you noticed anything strange lately?" Jake's blood went cold. He turned to find Zarathea standing right behind him, having moved with that silent grace of hers. "Government agents?" she asked quietly. "Looks like it," Jake whispered. "They know something is here." For a moment, Zarathea's old imperial bearing returned. She straightened to her full height and her markings began to glow softly. "I will not be taken by your primitive authorities." "Hey," Jake said firmly but gently. "Nobody's taking anybody anywhere. But we need to be smart about this." The agents knocked on Jake's door a few minutes later. He opened it calmly, trying to look like he had been interrupted from normal work. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Agent Torres and this is Agent Kim. We're investigating some unusual readings in this area. Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary lately?" "Not really," Jake replied honestly. "What kind of readings?" "Electromagnetic anomalies. Unusual energy signatures, the kind that might come from advanced technology." Behind Jake, hidden in the bedroom, Zarathea was presumably using some kind of alien device to mask her presence. He could only hope it was working. "I work with computers," Jake said. "Would that cause readings?" Agent Torres looked at his partner, then back at Jake. "Mind if we take a look around? Just routine." Jake's heart was pounding, but he stepped aside. "Sure, no problem." The agents walked through his apartment using some kind of scanning device. Jake watched nervously as they examined his living room, kitchen, and bathroom. When they approached the bedroom door, Jake held his breath. The scanner beeped loudly when Agent Kim pointed it at the bedroom. "There's definitely something in there," Agent Torres said, reaching for the door handle. Jake's mind raced. He was about to be caught hiding an alien in his apartment. But as the door opened, the bedroom appeared completely normal. No sign of Zarathea anywhere. The agents scanned the room thoroughly, looking confused when their device continued beeping but found nothing unusual. "Equipment malfunction," Agent Kim finally said. "These new scanners are still buggy." After the agents left, Jake waited a full 10 minutes before calling out softly, "They're gone." The air in his bedroom shimmered, and suddenly Zarathea appeared, sitting calmly on his bed as if she had been there the whole time. "Holographic camouflage," she explained. "I projected an image of an empty room while remaining invisible." "That's incredible," Jake said, relief flooding through him. "Your government is more observant than I expected," Zarathea admitted. "They will return with better equipment." Jake sat down heavily in his desk chair. "So what do we do?" Zarathea was quiet for a long moment. "I have been working on a communication array," she said finally. "I successfully contacted a Luxarian scout ship yesterday." Jake felt his stomach drop. "You're leaving?" "They have offered to retrieve me," Zarathea confirmed. "I would be taken to a neutral planet, away from the political complications of my supposed death." "That sounds like a good opportunity," Jake said, trying to keep his voice neutral even though the thought of her leaving made him feel hollow inside. "Yes," Zarathea agreed, though she didn't sound excited about it. "I would be free to pursue my own interests. Scientific research, cultural studies, no royal obligations." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Jake worked up the courage to ask, "When?" "The ship will be in range tomorrow night." Jake nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Over the past month, Zarathea had become such an important part of his life that he couldn't imagine the apartment without her. But he knew he had no right to ask her to stay. "Jake," Zarathea said softly. "Yeah?" What you said when you were ill, about being alone, about fearing you would always be alone, did you mean that? Jake felt his face flush with embarrassment. I don't really remember everything I said during the fever. You said that your previous relationship ended because she found you boring, that you believed no one would ever truly understand you or accept you as you are. Jake looked down at his hands. Fever makes you say stupid things. It makes you say honest things, Zarathea corrected. I have learned that about humans. When your defenses are down, you reveal your true selves. Okay, yeah, Jake admitted. I did feel that way. Sometimes I still do. I understand that feeling, Zarathea said quietly. On my world, I was surrounded by people constantly, yet I felt completely isolated. No one knew who I really was beneath the royal facade. Jake looked up at her. And now? Now I find myself in a strange situation, she replied with a small smile. I am truly known by someone for the first time in my life, someone who has seen me at my worst and my best, who has challenged my beliefs and helped me grow. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Zarathea. I told the scout ship I needed more time to consider their offer, she continued, because I realized that for the first time I am not alone, and neither are you. Jake stared at her, hardly daring to believe what she seemed to be saying. But your research, he said, your chance at freedom. I can conduct research here, Zarathea replied. Your species fascinates me more than any distant planet could. And as for freedom, she paused, looking directly into his eyes. I have never felt more free than I do in this small apartment with you. The government agents will keep looking, Jake warned. Then we will be careful, Zarathea said simply. I have technology that can keep us hidden, and if necessary, I can always contact the scout ship later. Jake felt a smile spreading across his face. You want to stay? I want to stay, she confirmed. If you will have me. Are you kidding? Jake laughed. This past month has been the best time of my life. Zarathea's formal posture finally relaxed, completely. Then it is decided. I will make this world my home. Our home, Jake corrected gently. Our home, she agreed. And for the first time since he had known her, her smile was completely natural and unguarded. That night, as they sat together watching the stars from Jake's small balcony, Zarathea told him stories about her home world, and Jake shared more about his own past and dreams. They were no longer an alien princess and a human servant, or even just roommates sharing space. They had become something neither of them had expected to find. Real companions who understood each other completely. 2 months later, Jake woke up to the smell of something delicious cooking in his kitchen. He found Zarathea making what she called fusion breakfast. Eggs prepared with some kind of alien spice that made them taste like they were seasoned with starlight. Good morning, she said, with a smile that had become as familiar and comforting as his morning coffee. Morning, Jake replied, kissing her cheek before pouring himself a cup of the incredible coffee she had learned to make using her advanced technology. Their relationship had evolved naturally over the weeks. What had started as mutual care during his illness had grown into genuine affection, then into something deeper. They had never formally declared themselves a couple. It had just happened, as naturally as breathing. Any word from the government agents? Jake asked as he sat down to breakfast. My monitoring systems show they are still occasionally scanning the area, but my camouflage technology is holding, Zarathea reported. Though I did have to deflect a satellite scan yesterday. You can deflect satellites? Small ones, she said with a modest shrug that made Jake laugh. Their quiet morning was interrupted by a sharp rhythmic knocking on the door. This wasn't the casual knock of a neighbor or the official knock of government agents. This was something else entirely. Zarathea went very still, her violet eyes widening with recognition. What is it? Jake asked. Luxarian military protocol, she whispered. Someone from my world is here. Jake looked through the peephole and saw a tall figure in a dark cloak standing in the hallway. The figure's face was hidden, but something about their posture reminded Jake of Zarathia's old imperial bearing. "Princess Zarathia," came a voice from the other side of the door. It was deep, male, and carried the same musical quality as Zarathia's voice. "I know you are in there. Open this door." Zarathia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "My brother," she said quietly. "The new heir? Prince Kael'thon. He was always father's favorite." She straightened her shoulders, and for a moment Jake saw a flash of the old royal mask. "I suppose he has come to ensure I am truly dead." Jake moved to stand beside her. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Zarathia looked at him with such gratitude that it made his chest tight. Then she walked to the door and opened it. The man standing in the hallway was clearly Zarathia's brother. He had the same violet eyes, the same silver markings, and the same tall, elegant build. But where Zarathia had learned warmth and openness, Kael'thon radiated cold authority. "Sister," he said, stepping into the apartment without invitation. "You look different." "Hello, Kael'thon," Zarathia replied, calmly. "I assume father sent you to confirm my death." "Indeed, though I find you very much alive." His gaze swept over the apartment, taking in the signs of shared living. 2 coffee cups, photos of Jake and Zarathia together, her alien devices integrated seamlessly with his human furniture, and apparently living in domestic bliss with a primitive human. "Jake is not primitive," Zarathia said firmly. "And yes, I am alive. I chose to stay on Earth." Kael'thon looked at Jake as if he were examining an interesting but inferior specimen. "You, human, leave us. This is a family matter." "Actually, no," Jake said, surprising himself with his calm tone. "This is my home, and Zarathia is my partner. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of me." Kael'thon's eyebrows rose. "Your partner? Sister, surely you have not fallen so far as to form an emotional attachment to a lower life form?" Jake felt anger flare in his chest, but Zarathia spoke before he could respond. "Jake is not a lower life form," she said, her voice carrying an edge of warning. "He is more intelligent, kind, and honorable than most of the nobles at father's court, including you." "You have been corrupted," Kael'thon said with disgust. "This planet has poisoned your mind with weak emotions and inferior values." "This planet has taught me what it means to truly live," Zarathia replied. "What it means to care for someone and be cared for in return. What it means to be valued for who I am, not what title I carry." "Father was right to declare you dead," Kael'thon sneered. "The sister I knew would never have debased herself like this." "The sister you knew was miserable," Zarathia shot back. "She was trapped in a role that slowly killed everything real inside her. I am happier now than I have ever been." Kael'thon pulled out a device that looked like a crystal rod. "I have been authorized to bring you home by force if necessary. Your death was premature. Father has reconsidered. There is a place for you in the new order." "As what?" Zarathia asked. "A puppet? A political marriage to secure some alliance?" "As royalty. As you were born to be." Zarathia looked at the device in her brother's hand, then at Jake, then back at Kael'thon. "I decline," she said simply. Kael'thon activated the device and it began to glow with a harsh white light. "This is not a request, sister." Jake stepped forward, placing himself between Zarathia and her brother. She said no. "Move aside, human," Kael'thon commanded. "This does not concern you." "Everything that concerns her concerns me," Jake replied firmly. Kael'thon raised the device, pointing it at Jake. "Then you will be eliminated as an obstacle." Before Jake could react, Zarathia moved with incredible speed. Her own hands began to glow with soft blue light, and she grabbed her brother's wrist. "If you harm him," she said in a voice Jake had never heard her use before, cold, dangerous, and absolutely certain, "I will use every piece of advanced technology I have learned to defend him, and I have learned quite a lot." Brother and sister faced each other, both glowing with alien energy. while Jake stood between them, feeling completely out of his depth but determined not to back down. "You would choose this creature, over your own family?" Kelthan asked. "I would choose love over duty," Zarathea replied. "I would choose happiness over status. I would choose someone who sees me as a person rather than a title." "You are pathetic," Kelthan spat. "I am free," Zarathea corrected. For a long moment, the siblings stared at each other. Then Kelthan lowered his device. "Very well," he said coldly. "You are declared dead, and dead you shall remain. Do not expect any aid from the Luxarian Empire. You are no longer our concern." "Good," Zarathea said firmly. Kelthan walked to the door, then paused. "When this novelty wears off, when you realize what you have given up, do not come crawling back. There will be no place for you." "I won't need to come back," Zarathea replied with complete certainty. "I'm already home." After Kelthan left, Jake and Zarathea stood in their living room, processing what had just happened. "Are you okay?" Jake asked. "I am perfect," Zarathea replied, and Jake could see that she meant it completely. "You gave up everything for me," he said, still hardly believing it. "No," she corrected, taking his hands in hers. "I gave up nothing, and gained everything. I gave up a cold throne and gained a warm home. I gave up subjects who feared me and gained a partner who loves me. I gave up a title and gained a real identity." Jake pulled her into his arms, feeling overwhelmed by gratitude and love. "What do we do now?" he asked. Zarathea smiled, the expression bright and genuine and full of possibilities. "Now we live," she said simply. "We build a life together. I continue my research into human culture, with a permanent test subject." "Hey," Jake protested with a laugh. "I help your species advance technologically, but carefully and gradually. I use my knowledge to make the world better, and most importantly," she looked into his eyes with complete sincerity, "I love you, and let myself be loved in return." Jake kissed her then, tasting the alien spices from breakfast and something even sweeter, the taste of a future he had never dared to imagine. Later that day they sat together on the balcony again, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Zarathea had her head on Jake's shoulder, and he was playing with her hair, still amazed that this incredible being had chosen to build a life with him. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Giving up your royal life?" "Never," she replied without hesitation. "On Luxaria, I was Princess Zarathea, heir to a throne I never wanted. Here I am simply Zara, your partner, your friend, your love, and that is worth more than any crown." Jake smiled, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. "I love you too," he said softly. "I know," she replied with a contented sigh. "And that is the most amazing thing of all." As the night deepened around them, they stayed curled together on their small balcony, no longer an alien princess and a lonely human, but simply two beings who had found in each other exactly what they had never known they were looking for: home.